You are listening to the Oh Crap Potty Training podcast. I am your host, Jamie Glowacki, and I am the author of Oh Crap Potty Training and Oh Crap, I Have a Toddler. All right. Today's going to be quick and dirty, you guys. Let's talk about spring breaks, spring potty training, because I know Easter's coming up. I know people have spring breaks, yeah, and this is a prime time for potty training. So if you are potty training during a spring break and your child has to go back to daycare and or preschool, there are a couple of things that I want you to be aware of. Number one, be sure to check in with your daycare and or preschool to see how they handle it, what's going to happen in the classroom. Yeah. You should know your child's bathroom setup. So if you haven't, for some reason, been in the classroom or don't know their potty setup, and I think this is so funny because the last few clients I've worked with have been like, oh, I don't really know what the bathroom setup is. You need to know so you can prepare your child. So if you can't be in the classroom, that's okay. Have the teacher send you pictures so your child can get awareness. But I think at this age, you should really be able to go into the daycare, at least in the morning, or, pick up and suss out what's going on. If the bathroom is under lock and key down the hall and absolutely has to have an adult walk them out of the classroom, this is a terrible setup for potty training. I understand you may not have a choice for daycare, but this is a terrible setup. And the big thing about a setup like this that I question is like, how does anybody potty train under that circumstance where they have to really go far away? Because, the newly potty trained, they kind of have to go fast when they go. So check out the bathroom situation. Also, is it in like a low wall that's in the middle of the room and the kids don't really have privacy? That's something to know. That Pascal's preschool looked like that. So, all teachers could kind of just be looking at, the kids were not in a closed area. Is it bathroom stalls? Do they have little potties? Do they have little toilets that are very low to the ground, like in elementary school? Or do they have a big toilet and there's a step stool and a seat insert? Get very familiar with what your child will be going back to. Yes? Prepare the teacher. Ask, is your child the first one potty training? Is your child in the middle ground? So first kids that are potty training, the first one in a classroom, that's a hard road because it's not really fair to them. They're like, everybody else just gets to pee and poop where they're playing and I got to go take time out. That's kind of crazy. So that is a harder thing. You can use it and say like, oh, you get to teach the other kids, but it becomes a harder thing. If there are other kids in the classroom, is there a more advanced potty trained kid who can help your child and be a bathroom buddy? This is awesome. This really can help with self-initiation. Is your child, not is your child, scratch that. Do they take the children at set intervals in groups? And what does that look like? So get specific with the details so you can prepare your child. I find that many parents kind of ask questions, but don't ask enough questions or don't know the setup or don't know the routine. And so that way you can be preparing your child for whatever it looks like at that daycare or preschool. If your daycare is giving you a hard time, this will be phenomenally difficult. Yes. So again, you may not have a choice with daycare, but really try to suss out why they're giving you a hard time. I find a lot of daycares now just kind of are understaffed. They don't want to do the heavy lifting. But then if you're a working parent, you get totally screwed because a lot of preschools demand full-time potty training. So this will have to be addressed at some point, but try to get under that and figure that out. The biggest problem with daycare not being on board is if you're potty training, let's say you have 4 to 7 days, like maybe you have a whole week or maybe you just have a long weekend, right? The big problem is you will be future tripping. You will not allow the process to unfold. Every day of potty training usually changes. It gets better. It can be miraculous overnight. All of a sudden it'll click for your kid. But what I see happen when kids have to go back to a daycare setting is parents are so concerned that they have everything perfect that they're future tripping on the first day. And so the first day can look like an absolute cluster. And then 3 days later, your kid could be totally great with it. But parents destroy the process by putting too much pressure because they're day one and they're like, oh my God, what are we going to do about daycare in 6 days? And I'm like, whoa, settle down, give it 6 days. Let's see, So it will mess with your head. When you ask these questions, if your daycare says, oh yeah, we'll just follow your lead, we're super supportive, do not take that as a final answer. I hear that quite a lot, and they're super supportive if your child is self-initiating, able to go use a big toilet by themselves, wipe their own butt, manipulate their own clothing, all because you did this on a long weekend. That is not going to happen. So be very, very specific with your daycare as to what do they mean they're supportive? What do they mean they'll follow your lead? Particularly, how much time are they going to give you to work out the kinks? A lot of kids potty train over a vacation. They come back and, they come back to school, and the first day they have a lot of accidents, but then the second day they're great. It takes them a while to catch up. This is what infuriates me. We don't give these little guys a freaking half a chance to learn something. It's like, oh, you took 4 days to do a major milestone and now they should be perfect. That's asinine. It irritates me to no end that this is the only milestone people do this with. And if they don't do it like that, oh, they're not ready. Dude, did your kid walk in 4 days? No, they fell on their ass a lot. Were they not ready to walk? No, it took practice and falling, right? I don't know why we do this with potty training. It just breaks my heart. But anyway, I persist. So ask those very specific questions and then ask what kind of grace period do you have? If I send clothes, is it okay if I send clothes in a Ziploc and we give them a fighting chance for, a good week? This is something that has to be discussed. This has come up with a couple of clients, and it is so heartbreaking. If your child is having accidents or making mistakes, please discuss this with the daycare provider and tell the daycare provider that you do not want to discuss this in front of your child. I'm hearing about daycare providers who at pickup in front of the class, in front of other parents, in front of the child say, oh yeah, he had a poop accident, so now we're going to put him back in diapers. And with 2 of these kids, it elicited such a shame response that they rejected all potty training. So don't do that. Don't talk shitty about your kid, and don't let somebody else talk shitty about your kid in front of them. Sometimes we do have to talk that way, but not in front of our kids and not in front of other people. So make sure you say that ahead of time. Hey, if we need a progress report on potty training, I'd prefer you not to do it in front of my child, because you can't control their tone. You can't control how they say it, And then the last thing is make sure you're on the lookout. You want to really pay attention. Always in potty training, but what we're looking for is the child's pee signal. So this is their pee dance. This is what they look like when they're about to pee. Right? So that, again, may be deer in the headlights. That could be walking on tiptoes, grabbing the crotch, sort of classic ones. But if your child has a particular tell, see if you can get that. You also really want to really lock into their pee pattern. So when they wake up, how much time do they have before that first pee? When they have some fluids, do they start peeing right away? Are they camels? Can they go for a couple of hours? Are they the college drinking age where where you can go for hours, you break the seal, and then you got to pee 6 times in an hour? You want to lock into that pattern as soon as you can. And don't be weird. Don't be obsessive. Don't keep logs. But that's what you're really looking for, because those 2 things allow you to convey that information to the daycare provider or, whoever you have watching your child. And that is super duper helpful. That's the information. When you want to you return to daycare after potty training, really try to get a very brief, index card length, what's going on for your kid. Don't overload your daycare with tons of instructions, and if your kid is to the point where I see this a lot when people book with me and before we start working together, they're getting a pee in the potty, but they're spinning plates and juggling fire. That's what I call it. So it's like, okay, yeah, he twitches his left eye slightly when he has to pee. And then we have to all do a dance and a song. And then I have to take off all his clothes. And then I have to, like, you get a pee, but it's only if the stars are aligned and you have the eye of Newton. I don't know what else. Like, it's a crazy thing. That's not necessarily being successful. Yeah, we shouldn't have to entertain the child. We shouldn't have to be, doing all these mechanisms to get them to pee. So if that's happening for you and you can't swing a consult or whatever the case may be honest with your daycare. Because sometimes the kids, like the herd mentality, going to the bathroom together, sometimes it can just be a different person, a different change of scenery, and your child can do great. But I would be like kind of honest with them and be like, hey, we're having a little bit of trouble. Like, I have to kind of entertain him. I don't expect you to, but I'm just wondering if we can give this a shot because I think maybe he'll be different with you. And this makes we want to appeal to human nature of our daycare providers. They love and take care of your kid, right? But sometimes it's weird. You can get into a pissing match with them about like, who knows more, right? And sometimes they'll be like, no, your kid's not ready. Your kid's not ready. So what we want to do is appeal to their nature of like, oh, my kid can like you better, or you work such magic with him. I'd like to give it a shot. And this makes anybody want to rise to the occasion as opposed to coming in sort of with boxing gloves on or, demanding. So we want to appeal to their better nature and not their worse nature, which, we all have. So that. And then again, if you can, we do have a daycare course that Jen Latalian and I wrote together, and that has all the myriad of things that you should have ahead of time, but also all the things that can happen in daycare and the various fixes. And there are so many of them. It just kind of, you have to kind of pick and choose your own adventure. So don't forget, we have that at jamieglowacki.com. And okay, that's it for today. If you are potty training this spring and spring break or over Easter, you've got this. I have full faith in you. You can do it. Just remember, stay calm. Stay cool, collected, stay as regulated as you can. And this isn't a measurement of your parenting. It really isn't. Okay. So if your kid has struggles with this, it's not because you did something wrong. It's not because they're not ready. They're totally capable of doing this. It's just, you got to find their in, and it only really works if you stay regulated. It only gets better when you stay regulated. A lot of parents start losing their shit too early on, and that makes everything go to hell in a handbasket. So I wish you peace and regulation in your potty training journey. All right, guys, as always, I appreciate you listening. Have a great day and rock on.